The Allison engine screams as the olive-drab fighter skims the endless steppe, canopy shuddering in the slipstream. Tracers whip past like lethal sparks. The pilot hauls back on the stick. The Airacobra rolls violently, nose dipping under the weight of that monstrous 37mm cannon. Below, a formation of German bombers lumbers toward Soviet positions. He closes, squeezes the trigger, the cannon booms like artillery, and a Junkers bursts into flame, corkscrewing earthward. But in the West, this same plane was branded a failure. Some American pilots refused to fly it at all. Here, it hunts. What happens when the wrong tool falls into the right hands? This is the story of the Bell P-39 Airacobra, a fighter America designed to dominate the skies. Britain quickly rejected, and the Soviet Union transformed into one of the Eastern Front's deadliest weapons. Often derided in the West as a Peashooter, its radical mid-engine layout and hub-mounted cannon promised revolution. Yet without its turbo-supercharger, it struggled above 15,000 feet and fell short against high-altitude foes. Through Lend-Lease, nearly 5,000 reached the Red Air Force. There, in brutal low-level combat over frozen plains and ruined cities, it found its true war. You'll discover how the Airacobra racked up more aerial victories on the Eastern Front than any other American-built fighter. The deeper truth: a machine's destiny isn't decided by its blueprints. It's shaped by the battlefield it meets. In the late 1930s, air forces across the world chased the same dream. Fighters that could climb rapidly to 20,000 feet and beyond, escorting bombers deep into enemy territory and outfighting interceptors in the thin air above the clouds. Bell Aircraft's radical answer was the P-39 Airacobra, engine mounted behind the cockpit, tricycle landing gear, and a 37mm cannon firing straight through the propeller hub. It looked futuristic, handled beautifully on the ground, and promised devastating firepower. But cost-cutting killed its potential. The Army Air Corps deleted the turbo supercharger, slashing high-altitude performance. Top speed and climb rate collapsed above 12,000 feet. Britain ordered hundreds, tested them against Spitfires, and promptly canceled most, shipping the rest overseas. When America entered the war, the Airacobra became a stopgap frontline fighter. In the Pacific, early models faced agile Japanese Zeros over jungle airstrips and short-range battles. It could strafe barges and dual escorts when nothing better was available, but losses mounted quickly. Pilots complained of unreliable armament, limited range, and vulnerability in prolonged climbs. In every theater that mattered to the West, the verdict was the same. By 1942, the Airacobra wasn't just unfashionable, it was already being written off. If this turning point matters to you, take a moment to mark it. Then, back to the story. Then came Lend-Lease. Of the 9,558 built, 4,719 went east, ferried across Alaska, or crated through Persia. They arrived on a front utterly unlike Europe or the Pacific. Endless flat steppe, primitive forward airstrips, air combat almost always below 15,000 feet. The Luftwaffe flew close support, Stukas diving on troops, twin-engine bombers striking supply lines, Messerschmitts sweeping low to strafe. Geography dictated everything. Short sorties from muddy fields, winter ice, summer dust. Soviet pilots flew outdated aircraft, often without radios, relying on rigid formations and raw courage. The Airacobra landed tough, well-armored, radio-equipped, and packing a cannon that could disembowel a bomber in one hit. Early units fought in the south, including around Stalingrad, the city that broke the Sixth Army, where a handful began quietly changing reputations. Americans had assumed high-altitude performance mattered everywhere. Germans believed the Soviet Air Force permanently crippled after 1941. Soviets themselves distrusted foreign equipment until test pilots took the Cobra low and fast, felt its vicious roll rate, and heard that cannon thunder. One early report from a young captain named Alexander Pokrishkin stood out. Flown aggressively below 10,000 feet, the plane's quirks seemed to vanish. Spring 1943. The Kuban bridgehead, a narrow strip of churned earth between the Black Sea and the Caucasus foothills. After Stalingrad, the Germans cling desperately to their last toehold in the region. The Luftwaffe throws everything in: waves of Ju-87 Stukas, Ju-88 bombers, elite Bf-109G and Fw-190 fighter wings. Soviet forces mass for a counteroffensive. Every supply convoy, every trench line needs air cover. The Red Air Force's 4th Air Army commits its best units, many now re-equipped with late-model P-39Ns and Qs, better engines, improved propellers, often with wing guns removed for sharper handling. Ground crews work in freezing dawn light, swing-starting engines on snow-packed strips. Intelligence warns of massive German reinforcement flights. Weather turns vicious. Clear skies 1 hour, blinding blizzards the next. Patrols launch constantly. Radios crackle with clear Soviet voices for the first time in years. Airacobras fly low top cover, conserving the altitude they cannot waste. Small victories accumulate. A flight surprises diving Stukas, 37mm rounds ripping wings apart. Another squadron forces overshooting 109s into flat turns where the Cobra's speed and roll shine. April 1943. The Kuban air battle erupts, one of the densest aerial campaigns of the war. Over the village of Krimskaya, German bombers descend in waves, escorts stacked high. Soviet controllers vector elite guards regiments in the famous Kuban ladder, pairs staggered by altitude, free to hunt. Leading the charge, the 16th Guards Fighter Aviation Regiment under Major Alexander Pokrishkin, alongside Grigory Rechkalov's squadron. They spot the enemy's swarm, roll into a shallow dive, engines howling. Pokrishkin fires first. The 37mm cannon thuds, and a Bf-109 disintegrates mid-air. Wingmen follow, machine guns stitching fuselages. The German formation fractures. Stukas jettison bombs and flee. Escorts scatter. Cobras pursue low, cannons barking slow but lethal. One solid hit, one kill. An Fw-190 slashes across Pokrishkin's tail. He snap rolls, forces the overshoot, and sends a burst into the cockpit. The 190 tumbles away, trailing smoke. Minutes stretch into hours. Reinforcements keep arriving on both sides. Smoke trails never clear the sky. By evening, Soviet pilots claim dozens downed for light losses. The Germans pull escorts back. Bombers fly exposed. Visual chaos. Red and green tracers crisscross. Car door canopies gulp freezing air. Pilots strain against crushing G-forces. Sweat fogging oxygen masks even in sub-zero cold. Fear is constant. A young lieutenant spots an Fw-190 closing fast. Violent break, but his wingman stalls into the classic flat spin, plummeting helplessly. Radio traffic turns frantic. Orders to break off, reform, cover the wounded. Returning aircraft limp in, riddled with holes. One mechanic later counts over 200 hits, yet the sturdy airframe and armored engine keep flying. German prisoners, captured days later, admit dread at hearing coordinated Soviet radio chatter, a sound they rarely faced before. On the ground, wreckage litters frozen fields. Recovery crews search for survivors in burning snow. Pokrishkin lands silent, face drawn, tallying another day's score. Emotional weight peaks, watching a comrade flame out, powerless to help, knowing tomorrow the same sky waits. As the sun sets over the Kuban, smoke finally thins. The Luftwaffe has lost local control. Bombers are curtailed. Ground support collapses. Soviet forces hold the bridgehead and begin pushing west. Both sides now understand. Germans realize they have bled irreplaceable veterans and can no longer dominate low-level skies. Soviets grasp that this foreign machine, adapted ruthlessly, can outfight the best the enemy fields. And from that moment, the balance in the southern skies never fully returned. The Kuban battles shattered Luftwaffe's strength in the south. Hundreds of experienced pilots and aircraft were lost, replacements thinned by growing Allied bombing in the west. German tactical air support withered, easing Soviet breakthroughs at Kursk that summer and accelerating the relentless drive westward. Airacobra-equipped guard regiments led many advances, liberating Ukraine, forcing Romania to switch sides, contesting Hungary. The type escorted IL-2 Sturmoviks, hunted supply trains, and dueled late-model 109s and 190s on equal terms at low altitude. For men like Pokrishkin, the Cobra wasn't a stopgap. It was the machine that taught them how to win. The Germans had underestimated Soviet adaptability, dismissing Lend-Lease aircraft as second-rate. By 1944-45, the Red Air Force achieved parity, then superiority over the Eastern Front, a shift the Airacobra helped forge. Though over 1,000 P-39s were lost in Soviet service, they accounted for thousands of enemy aircraft destroyed, more than any other American fighter across all theaters. If this story deserves to be remembered, acknowledge it quietly. Wars aren't won by perfect machines, but by people who learn faster than their enemy. The quiet truth settles in. The Airacobra wasn't inherently flawed. It was simply fighting the wrong war in the wrong place. Designed for high-altitude interception, crippled without its turbo supercharger, it arrived on fronts that demanded the opposite: low, brutal ground support duels. Soviet pilots and tacticians saw not weakness, but perfect alignment. A heavy cannon for bombers, blistering acceleration in dives, radio coordination their own planes long lacked. The overlooked factor was tactical fit. Western air war rewarded climbers. The Eastern Front punished anything that couldn't dominate below 15,000 feet. The irony history often forgets: the fighter America scorned and Britain abandoned became the sharpest blade in Soviet hands. 5 of the top 10 Soviet aces scored most of their kills in it. Pokrishkin with 48, Rechkalov with 44. The Airacobra wasn't a mistake. Our assumptions were. Subscribe if preserving real wartime history matters more than myths. The steppe wind carries away the last echoes of Allison engines. Twisted metal cools under red stars, scattered across a front moving inexorably west. The Airacobra's roar lingered longer than anyone predicted, carrying Soviet victory mile by bloody mile. If you're watching from a place touched by this war, or if someone in your family flew or fought, share where you're listening from below. But what if its greatest impact wasn't the kills it scored, or even the skies it reclaimed? Next time, the battle that didn't just trap an army, it destroyed the myth that Germany could still win the war.